Cindy again. I'm here doing another book review video. I wanted to mention first off that my New Year's resolution for 2012 was to read one book a week in hopes to, at the end of the year, have read just over 52 books. I'm trying to do a goal of 55 books for the year. In January, I read 5 books, and only 2 of them I really enjoyed. The other 3 I actually don't even have to show you because I put them for recycling. If you want to see reviews about my January books, go to my January favorites video. I mentioned both Winter's Bone by Daniel Woodrell, which I loved, and Mockingjay, which is the last book from the Hunger Games trilogy by Suzanne Collins. I do mini reviews on them in that video, so I'm not going to repeat myself just because you might have already seen that. But I'll put the link to the video right here, and it's about halfway into the video the reviews start, so you can just skip ahead. Highly recommend this. Super, super good, and Jennifer Lawrence is really, really good in the movie as well, if you guys haven't seen it. Okay. As for February, in February I read 4 books. So again, I reached my goal, and these are them. And I'm going to go through these 4 with you right now. So the first one is called Witch's Canyon. It's by Mariotte, and it's a supernatural tie-in book. If you watch the show Supernatural, you'll know these characters, Dean and Sam Winchester. It follows them to this town near the Grand Canyon that every 40 years or so experiences a bunch of murders. And the murders are actually done by these ghost-like characters and by animals, or ghost animals. And the boys are there to kind of stop this from happening. It's very much like an episode of Supernatural. They go into the town, they try to figure out how to stop what's going on. Well, I'm not going to say how they end up helping the town, but in their usual Winchester way, they figure out a way to do it. What's cool about this book is, one, I wasn't expecting it to be very good. Just because it's a tie-in, I thought, okay, it'll be just like pure entertainment, and it is that, but it actually gives you some insight onto the boys' characters that isn't really discussed in the show, which I thought was really interesting. It also is sort of like an extended episode, because there's a lot of different major plot points in the book. So there's one big battle in the town, and then there's another big battle at the mall, and then there's another big battle at Witch Canyon. So there's like multiple points in the book where sort of a lot of action takes place, and there's also points where, you know, it's just Dean or it's just Sam, and I really thought it was well written, and it was interesting, and it was a lot more exciting and fresh than I expected it to be. So for a tie-in book, I was really impressed, and I have all the supernatural tie-in books, but this is the first one that I'd read. So yeah, highly recommend this, Witch's Canyon. If you like the show, you will like reading this, I guarantee it. And if you haven't seen the show but you like supernatural books, I still recommend reading this. You might not understand some of the references because it doesn't force feed you the Winchester history, but you'll still enjoy the book. So yeah, great read. The second book I read was Ice Princess. It is by Camilla Lackburg. She is a Swedish writer. She's considered the female Stieg Larsson, so if you like the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series, this is one of the books that kind of people recommend. It takes place in a Scandinavian resort town where a woman is found in a bathtub, and she's frozen in this bathtub because there's no heat on in her house and it's wintertime, and she's been in the bathtub for a few days. It looks like she's killed herself, but it also, once it's investigated more thoroughly, it becomes clear that she actually didn't kill herself. Erica Falk is the main character in the book. She is a writer who ends up being one of the first people on the scene to find the body. And through her kind of researching skills, she delves into figuring out what happened to her friend Alex, who's the girl that's dead. It's actually a girl that she grew up with and was one of her best friends as a child. It also goes into one of the detectives that is from the town named Patrick. He's sort of leading the investigation, and also knew Erica when he was younger. So the two of them together end up figuring out what happened to her, and I have to say it wasn't my favorite crime thriller book that I've read, and a lot of what ends up happening I sort of guessed while I was reading the novel, which I always think if I can't guess it, it makes it a great book. But I sort of guessed pretty much everything that ended up happening. It was still well written, it was still interesting, but it didn't blow me away like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I would not compare the two at all. I think that that book is like a million times better. But if you like crime novels, if you like sort of the Scandinavian atmosphere in a book, you will find this to be a good read. Now, I have the next book in her series, which is called The Preacher, and I'm hoping because it's sort of her second novel that it'll be better, like her writing will improve. A lot of the times first novels, you know, you're working out your kinks as a writer and maybe they're not your best. Although I mentioned in my last review a book called Before I Go to Sleep, which was a first novel, and that was amazing. Usually they're not always that great. So I'm excited to see if she improves and her books get a little bit more surprising. Next book is called Daughters of the Witching Hill. You know I love supernatural kind of books, and this one is about a family of witches. It takes place in the 1600s. This story is based on the Lancaster witch trials and witch burnings that took place in England at that time. So it sort of got some historical weight behind it, which I found very interesting. It's also not, because of that, a happy ending book, because it's very true to what happened to women like this at that time. It predates the Salem witch trials, so if you're at all interested in that history, you will like this book. The characters are really interesting. It goes into a lot about how at this time in England, like Catholicism was completely outlawed. You were not allowed to have deities in your house. You were not allowed to harbor priests. Like those were punishable by death offenses for people, and how that related into these witchcraft trials as well. It gives you a lot of history behind the hysteria of the witch trials and how they got people convicted and why certain women were taken. On top of that, there's also a story, a narrative story throughout the book about this one family of women. It follows a family through 3 generations, and they all have sort of a natural affinity for magic or sort of herbal healing and spiritual healing. A lot of the times they're not really doing spells, they're reciting prayer and using certain herbs that have been passed down through generations that are now considered illegal in the Protestant sort of religion that's taken over. Even if you don't like supernatural books, but you like historical kind of books, again, this is a book you would probably enjoy. So yeah, that's by Mary Sharratt, and I really, really enjoyed this. The last book I read in February was called When Autumn Leaves. Now, I mentioned this in my February favorites video, but just for this video's sake, in case you don't want to watch that, it's by Amy S. Foster. It's about a town called Avening in Washington that kind of draws magical people to the town. And one of the women that lives in Avening is this woman, Autumn, and she has to kind of give up her crown as sort of the leader of magical life in the town. She doesn't really call herself a witch. It's more of just a spiritual connection way of thinking. I mean, all these women have these natural abilities and powers, but it's not so much like hocus pocus. It's more kind of coming from within. But anyway, she has to leave her book of teachings to someone to kind of carry on because it's her time to go into retirement. And she puts the word out in the town for anybody who wants to volunteer to be her successor. And also she has been given a list by people in her society, in her group, of women that they feel are good for the job. And throughout the year, she ends up meeting a lot of the women on the list and figuring out who's going to be her successor, as well as who's going to be the 12 other women that are basically supporting that, the new successor. Each woman has their own ability, their own special talent that they are naturally good at. You learn about all these women's stories throughout the book. So this book is kind of like a collection of short stories, although Amy does an amazing job of interweaving them all together, making a great story that flows well, creating a lot of really interesting female characters. And again, the fact that they can do special things isn't really the point. The main point is just them discovering who they are and what their destiny should be and the path they should travel. And I think any woman, whether or not you like supernatural books or not, goes through that in their life. It started off sort of, I thought it wasn't going to be very good. I was sort of like, oh no, this book is not that great. And I actually it was my favorite book of the month by the end of it. So hugely recommend this. I really, really liked it. And if you like Alice Hoffman, if you like Sharratt and Allen, you will love this book. So yeah, it's definitely kind of a supernatural book that doesn't have any horror or like darkness in it. Yeah, A+ for that. A little preview for you guys about next book review video, so you guys can kind of see what you're looking forward to. Oh my gosh, so good. Okay, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.